Ladies and gentlemen, big terror,
Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hero News. Kia ora Chewy, how you love?
Kia ora Pat.
And welcome back.
I am back from the northern lands. Not as far north as you went, but
yeah,
but like the middle south northerns. How about that?
Could we?
Christchurch is what I'm saying.
Christchurch, yeah. We say Christchurch. It's probably easy. We just say Christchurch. How was it?
Probably better.
Yeah.
It was a really good weekend. It was my partner's birthday weekend. Her brother came over from Australia. I caught up with my brother, and we just had a really nice chill weekend eating the barbecue meats of
Christchurch.
Christchurch does really well.
Pretty good in Christchurch for sure. I had a sibling who had a big birthday, one of those ones with a 0 in the end. So we went to Auckland and had a massive party with a whole bunch of people who were in their prime in the 1990s, you know, like we all were, and all their kids who are now all kind of, I guess, 13 through 20, and they were their friends, and so it was a lot of fun. And I'll show you one thing. I got a chance to go visit some of my old haunts. So I need to put I haven't shared the screen yet. I'm sharing the screen now. Don't pay attention to me. I'm sharing the screen now. Here it comes now. This is a little video of me going through the Otara markets. My home. I felt at home. So one of the 3 aisles that we're walking through. This is the food aisle. Walking through the Otara markets and went to do some shopping. Also, it's a year since Dad passed away, so we did sort of they do an unveiling of the gravestone. Sounds a bit depressing, but after that, we went to Otara to have a look around the old stomps and didn't think about it, but the markets were on. Just like, oh, I'm home. So it was cool, man. And then, spent a bit of time with the fiance's family and with my family, and came back today at 5 o'clock. So the show might feel a little unorganized, but we're here. Oh, and really big news. We'll give you more details as we go through with this, but I think BHN, if we can find the funds, and I think we can, is going to be purchasing some printing gear and become in-house printers for our merch and stuff.
Oh, okay.
Did you? I might have been with Emily. Did I talk to you about this last week, or was I with Emily?
You were talking about it was a real sort of like maybe we could do this. So yeah, that's if we're heading that way, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's our printer here in Dunedin. Sadly, the business didn't work for him. It did for a long time, but it was tough for everybody. And at the end of it all, even though it kind of always feels a bit of a double-edged sword, someone's not hasn't worked out, but they needed to get rid of some of their printing gear. And if we can give to them what they would have got on the open market, and we can bring it all in-house, there we go. So here's the first thing I'm thinking, right? Once we get trained up on how to use it and start doing it, there was a name in one of the chats last week for Nicola Willis, and it was Nikki No Boats. And I just thought, that is the greatest name that there has ever been. Nikki No Boats.
Oh.
So Emily doesn't know this yet, but I'm going to try and get her to do a caricature of Nicola Willis with a ferry in the background and Nikki No Boats. And that'll be one of the first t-shirts we do, Nikki No Boats. And we'll see how many of them we can do. Because it's brilliant. Whoever came up with that, look, I'll give you credit if I can remember, but it came up in the chat, Nikki No Boats. And I just think that just leans itself to a pretty amazing little cartoon-esque t-shirt. So yeah,
that's phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal. All right. Apologies to new patrons, because I got back at 5 o'clock today. I haven't updated the outro music yet. I will do it tomorrow, and we'll give you a shout out tomorrow. But as I said, literally got back into the house at 5 o'clock this afternoon, so haven't had time to do any of that today. But fantastically, we have a guest with us to start off the show from Better New Zealand Trust. Why don't we just bring Catherine in? Catherine is from Better New Zealand Trust, and she is with us. Good evening, Catherine.
Good evening, both.
This is a fascinating story. Let me read out a paragraph from RNZ. Oh, actually, before I do that, just tell us about Better NZ Trust. Who are you guys, so people know what's going on?
Okay, thank you. We are basically a charitable trust formed back in 2015 when there were probably 3.5 EVs in the whole of New Zealand, and really designed as a vehicle, excuse the pun, to help increase the uptake of EVs in New Zealand by driving up and down the country. We used to do road trips that literally went from Cape Reinga to Bluff. In the days when, you'll probably hardly believe this, but the only really big 50 kilowatt charger in the whole of the South Island was in Greymouth. That was the only fast charger available. And we had, I think that first year we were probably 5 or 6 cars, and one of our members who was pretty good with spreadsheets used to actually produce you can charge from now to now, get up from the table, go move your car, so that we could charge everybody's car. And then we had, granny chargers out of the units that we were staying into our motel to sort of doing, slow home charging overnight. So, we were the pioneers, as it were, and we were showing people in most of New Zealand who had not seen an EV, or they might just have seen a Nissan Leaf, and we had three Teslas that people came out just to look at and stare. Well, nowadays people just look at a Tesla driving past and go, yeah, there's another one. They don't. Yeah. It's not that exciting. So we used to do that kind of outreach. We were actually we had money supplied from an educational pot that came out of ECA. So although they didn't pay us, they paid our expenses. So we were able to do some pretty large outreach, and we used to do EV show and tell sort of events literally up and down the country. So we had a riot. We really enjoyed it, and we felt as though we were helping New Zealand understand that driving an electric vehicle was something that they really had to do.
The EV world as well. I've, as I said, been up in Auckland for the weekend, and although Auckland is 12 times the size of Dunedin, it feels like there is much more than 12 times the number of EVs. And I wonder if a part of that is if you live in Auckland and you're driving from Helensville to the centre city, for work, then even if you're buying an EV on payment plan, probably the payment plan and the electricity together would still be around the same or even cheaper than if you were driving petrol every single day. So in bigger cities, it seems to be, at least in my mind, it seems to make more sense. Do you see that in the numbers, or are the smaller centres as actively uptaking of EVs?
Well, perhaps I'm actually now going back to when we were still doing those trips. So this is way before COVID. We used to explain to people that actually sometimes, even a Nissan Leaf with a range of 120 kilometres was exactly the car that a lot of mums needed to travel with the kids to and from school, to and from, different activities, to and from the supermarket, to and from wherever. Because they might do 40 kilometers a day, they might do 60 kilometers a day, but at 120 on the range, they would just plug it in overnight and off they'd go. And a lot of, a lot of the major numbers of kilometers driven are actually driven in very small sort of chunks, aren't they? I mean, as you say, you're going to do a big road trip. We did big road trips, but by and large, on a day-to-day basis, you just do a little sort of tootle around your own sort of neck of the woods, really, don't you? So, and I mean, at that stage even by 2019, you couldn't get a Nissan Leaf for probably less than $12,000. Well, now you could pick one up for $6,000.
I've had an EV since the start of April. So April, May, June, July, August, September. into October. So 6.5 months, and I've done about 6,000 Ks on it. And that's included 2 trips to Christchurch and 1 trip to Queenstown. So probably in 6.5 months, I might have done 4,500 Ks around Dunedin, because small city, so we don't do a lot of driving.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
We should probably actually get on to the reason you're here, although Chewy and I could talk to you about EVs the whole time.
Look, and I could talk to you about EVs for an awful lot of time, and we could just have a real good yarn.
Maybe next time, because this one's an interesting one. So you guys, Better NZ Trust, electric car lobby group takes Simeon Brown to court over emissions rules. An electric car lobby group, you guys, is taking Transport Minister Simeon Brown to court over his decision to lower tailpipe CO2 emission standards for car imports. The Better NZ Trust said it was unreasonable of Brown to direct his transport officials to consult only 4 motoring groups, all of which were against the standards, before making a decision. The trust said if EV suppliers had been consulted, they would have countered claims from the rest of the industry that there were not enough low-emission vehicles available to meet the standards. I'm just going to throw the ball to you in a second, but just to start off with, one of the reasons they might be able to make that argument is because EV sales have crashed since this government took over because of removing the clean car discount. So it seems like it's they set up the problem, so they knock it down themselves. But look, I read this story and I think a little bit like we hear, in America, everyone sues each other and you're taking you to sue. Why are you doing this? How are you doing this? And what is the overall objective with this court case that you guys are bringing?
Well, I suppose in the end, we had so much help when we were trying to promote the use of EVs, and the national government despite the fact that, if you remember, the national government were the first people in 2016 who actually set up the whole idea that EVs would not pay road user charges and there would be some dispensations for EVs. 8 years later, they changed their tune quite dramatically. And we just felt that we weren't consulted. Drive Electric, which is another, industry group, wasn't consulted. It was done very quickly. It was done with the people with vested interests who were always going to say what they ended up saying. And I think, as we have possibly seen with this government, with both tobacco and guns and now EVs, is there seems to be some kind of almost sleight of hand going on, which we just decided we had sort of had enough. So we felt that we would put our heads above the parapet, and with Lawyers for Climate Action, we would actually do something a bit more sort of meaty than just waving an EV flag in the corner going, what are you doing this for?
So take a half step back. Just explain to us his decision to lower tailpipe CO2 emission standards for car imports. What does that mean? Like, explain to us exactly what that is and why the EV industry would be like, nah, not good enough.
Right. 2021, if you remember, the clean car discount came in, which was let's give people money to help buy EVs, because the major, everybody could tell you that the major problem with buying electric vehicles was the upfront cost, because at that stage the only second-hand vehicles were probably Japanese imported Nissan Leafs, and lots of people who were happy to drive Leafs, lots of people weren't. Some people took exception to Nissan Leafs. So the government put $300 million into a pot to allow them to pay out. It started off at over $8,000, ended up at $7,000 to people who wanted to buy a brand new EV to bring the cost down. Then the second half of that was, we will tax polluting cars when they are imported. If somebody brings in a Ford Ranger Wildtrak, which emits 222 grams of carbon dioxide per kilometre, then they should pay for that privilege, because they're polluting far more than a Nissan Leaf or a ID4 or whatever. But the clean car standard was really aimed at the importers themselves, because they're the people who go to the Japanese car markets and say, yes, I'll have that, I'll have that, I'll have whatever. And the standard was meant to still allow them to bring in gas guzzling cars, but they had to be able to balance over the sort of the import over a year. They had to be able to account for the carbon dioxide emissions of the entire imported, chunk that they brought in. So that really was setting them up to go, please buy more, zero emission cars, and don't buy too many of the wild tracks. But if you have to buy wild tracks, then, you're going to have to pay for that, and that's going to be passed on to the customer. That's what the National Party then claimed to be the ute tax.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was just a polluter paying tax. And they set up various numbers of how much emissions those various things would be. What they have done is they've slackened off the levels of emissions that will happen in 2025, 2026, 2027 to the level that Australia has got them. Now, as you know, we all love following the Australians because they just have everything lined up so beautifully. But I'll give you one example, and I will have to read this. The standard in 2026, they wanted the standard on light passenger vehicles to be 84.5 grams of carbon dioxide per kilometre. The new standard will be 108.
Okay.
So,
20%
not. I mean, it's not even just a tiny, teensy weensy bit lower. It's ridiculously lower.
So the lowering of the standards is increasing of CO2s.
Sorry, yes, it's increasing. It's increasing the threshold that you have to get to. But what you could. Where did I find it? Oh, so before the clean car discount came in, which was June 21, the average emissions from a light passenger vehicle over the entire fleet was 176 grams. And that by November 2023, that had reduced to 109. So we were well on the way. The 2025 target was 112. They've now put it, the 100, that's staying the same, 112. So we're already better than the 2025 standard. So,
Chewy, you're much more up to play with the EV world than I am. Why don't you jump in and ask some intelligent questions?
I have an EV. I bought a second-hand one last year, and drove to Christchurch on it over the weekend, and it was an absolute blast. I think what this government has done is thrown out a scheme that was working. As you said, it was a give and take. We bring in more clean vehicles. We put a premium on the ones that we know aren't clean. But their marketing on it was incredibly effective by calling it a ute tax and going after every
poor
good
farmers.
Kiwi working class bloke that absolutely needs, as you said, a Ford Raptor to advertise their inner city marketing business. With that,
and I mean, perhaps even worse, Chewy, was that. When they cut the legs off the clean car discount on the 31st of December, the sale of EVs in December last year was, sort of astronomical. But B, they actually locked in the fact that the balance hadn't quite got to being sort of revenue neutral. It was damn close, but it wasn't quite there. So then they could say, and we've had, so basically they lost money. If they'd let it carry on, the polluter paying element would have balanced out what they'd been paying out. But in stopping it, that balancing act, just fell by the wayside. So, I mean, that was even more tragic, really, because, it's the downstream effects, isn't it, of more pollution in the atmosphere, more people with asthma, more people going to hospital, having to import more fuel from the Middle East. I mean, you can just go on and on and on for the sort of the unintended consequences.
Cherry, I'll come back to you, but I'm just not quite understanding what you guys are saying about National, because don't they love EVs? Didn't they promise to deliver 10,000 EV chargers? And isn't that, as Chewy as you love, isn't that interesting that's still on their website? 10,000 EV chargers. No,
But
really?
you know what they've done, don't you?
Yeah, I'm being facetious.
Yes, but Genesis have invested into ChargeNet, and Genesis is 50% owned by the government. And the government has been installing chargers since 2016 through the low emission vehicle fund, and giving people 50% for anybody who is invested in, building chargers, whether it be BP or Z or ChargeNet or whoever. So the government have been installing, but there's only 1,400 sort of serious, DC chargers around the whole country. So 10,000 by 2030 must mean that a lot of them will be destination chargers, which have their place, but which are not quite as sexy as DC chargers.
Chewy.
I think, and I guess this is exactly what the Better NZ Trust is set up to do, right? Is that there are a huge amount of pervasive myths about how bad EVs are for the environment, how difficult they are to run, how quickly you need a battery replacement. And isn't this government just feeding into these? That like even their promise of funding more EV chargers just really played into the fact of like, oh, there needs to be one every 50 Ks, otherwise people won't be able to go anywhere.
Yes.
EVs are only for the wealthy. I've seen some of these pop up in the chat here. I mean, a car that was 80 grand. The depreciation for people that are selling them is crushing, but it is putting them into the hands of people that can afford them in the second-hand market.
Yeah,
I bought a car last year that 8 months beforehand would have been out of my reach. And then I bought it for 20 grand. And then I'm seeing the same car pop up on Trade Me for 14.
Yes.
Now,
but you've saved money over 8 months, Chewy.
I've saved so much money. It's ridiculous. And even with things like the road user charges, even the things like this ridiculous ACC levy that for me as an EV driver, like my car is, for ACC purposes, is safer than the average car.
Yes,
but I'm going to be paying more than the average passenger vehicle
because
owner.
just think what that battery could possibly do to you. I mean, it really is very, very worrisome. I mean, it is misinformation, false advertising, the whole 9 yards. I mean, the only way, trickle down economics actually works in the car market, because people who can afford an $80,000 car do. They save money, they change it after 5, 6, 7 years, whatever, and that's the second-hand market. And obviously the fleets have been brilliant at putting second-hand cars like Ionics. The Westpac used to have a whole fleet of Ionics, and they would have put them into the second-hand market, and that's that's how it works. But one of my husband's cousins, just before the clean car discount went, bought a Nissan Leaf that only had a range of 65 kilometers. He bought it for $7,500, I think it was, with the clean car discount for an imported car, which was about $3,000 or whatever. So there he had a car that had actually cost him less than $5,000, and he was running it on the smell of the odd electron or three. So to complain, as a lot of people have, that the clean car discount was only benefiting the wealthy, missed the point by a very large margin.
But isn't it fair to say that it's those wealthy Tesla owners like Christopher Luxon's wife that have routed the system, eh? Those wealthy Tesla owners who got the deal. Anyway, hey, look, just to bring it back to where we were as well, because I'm really interested in this court case. What's happening and where is it going? What is the objective you guys want to see? Like, what's next for this court action?
Okay, basically, so we have lodged the statement of claim, which from which that press release explains what, why, and how. There are 4 different grounds. There's they failed to consult everybody who would be a stakeholder. They just consulted the people who they thought would help their what they wanted to do. The targets for carbon dioxide emissions were meant. It says they are meant to satisfy the minister that they're appropriate to make sure that we increase the supply of low emission vehicles. Well, that's obviously not going to happen. They completely ignored any of the information in the ERP 1, which is climate change plans, which had transport specific policies which were completely ignored. And the government has said in that they want 30% zero emission vehicles by 2035. So all they're doing, if they're slowing down the rate of increase in vehicles, is they're just making that curve to get to 2035 look more like a black ski run. And they've weakened the CCS targets. So Climate Change Response Act, what was that? All about trying to reduction of CO2, but that's what we're not going to do. And I don't know if you were in the plane, Pat, you might not have heard, but Catherine Ryan also had on this morning a lady who was talking about another research that they've done, and even Simon Watts, who, as you know, is a climate change minister, has admitted there is no way that we can meet our Paris commitments on carbon dioxide without buying in overseas help. And the Treasury reckoned at the end of 2023 that could cost us $24 billion. Now, how many EVs could you buy for $24 billion, do you think?
One or two, I think is the answer. Hey, Catherine, thanks for joining us tonight. Chewy, is there anything else you want to ask or check in before we wrap up?
I just want to wrap up that one of the things that we have seen with being an EV owner is it almost seems coordinated. There is just one hit after another. And like, I think we all knew that the road user charges were going to go on, and that's all fair enough. Like, I think most passenger vehicles are going to transition to road user charges in the next couple of years anyway, hopefully. But it's the fact that it has been a year of just targeted stuff at EV drivers. And I've seen that reflected in online commentary of like that we're all freeloaders and we are the ones that are doing the damage to the roads and that sort of thing.
Yes.
What in your view is it going to take to shift public perception and these pervasive myths that the government seem to be playing into as well?
Chewy, if I knew what that was, then we'd be doing it. I mean, we try very hard to, we've got myth busting elements on our website. We've got lots of information. We put up blogs. We have done various. Oh, thank you. Yes, very good. We've done lots and lots of things, but of course, you probably need to be an EV owner before you would look at a website called the Better New Zealand Trust. So that can be a bit sort of confronting. So in a way, I suppose this court case is trying hard to, at a high level, explain that, we can do all sorts of things, but if we don't have a livable planet and we keep our CO2 emissions down, then the government can do whatever it wants because nobody's going to be here to watch them. The existential threat of climate change doesn't really seem to have hit the general population. And there's we're such a small country, why would we bother? China's the problem, the US is the problem. It's always somebody else's fault, isn't it? So we really have to. I mean, we change people's minds virtually one person at a time, and sometimes all it takes is just putting somebody in the driving seat of one of your EVs and saying, "Just drive around the block," and they just go, "Oh wow," they just don't understand what it's like to drive one until they do drive one.
Yeah, and then they fall in love. People want to find out more about it. It's leadingthecharge.org.nz, but if you missed that, I just found you by googling Better NZ Trust and pops up in there as well. Catherine, it's been a real education having you. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's been lovely. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me.
I definitely will be blogging, I think, my trip to Waitangi from Dunedin in my EV. So we'll make sure people know about what's going on. And we'd love to have you back on again, and especially to follow this case that you guys are attempting as well.
Sure. Well, we'd love to put your blog up on our website.
Cool. This is my honeymoon, so I'm going to have to check in with the missus, but I wouldn't mind doing something. So we'll figure that out.
Well, okay. Disclaimers could be sort of happening all the way around.
All right, Catherine.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for your time. I was going to say to you, just before we go on, talking about the expense of EVs, I just did some numbers while we were talking. Because of the clean car discount, I get about, I still say fill up. Do you say fill up for EV? Fully charged. I can go from 0 to 100 for about $17.71 if you do per kilowatt price out of my house. Paying that $75 per 1,000 Ks, I get 500 Ks out of a full charge. So that means I'm paying around about $50 per 500 Ks. That's what it costs me if you include that's the electricity from my home. That's not from a charge from my home, and the road user charges. In my old Outlander, to go 500 Ks would take me 60 litres, which is $150 petrol. So this EV runs, including the road user charges, at about a third the cost. And then, of course, you bring into it that old Outlander of mine was breaking down quite a lot. EV's got, you'll tell me, what is it, 22 moving parts? And it's got a 7-year warranty. And is that enough?
I wouldn't know the exact moving parts, but it's certainly a lot less.
Yeah.
I put mine in for a service and a warrant the other day, and it cost me like $200 something, and that included new windscreen wipers, which was the only thing that needed doing.
Yeah.
My trip to Christchurch over the weekend, $30 to get up, $30 to get back.
Yeah.
The car is just faultless. It is so much easier to drive.
Yeah.
You know, people go, "Oh, you can fill up a car in fucking 5 minutes." Yeah, but who wants
Hang on.
to do
What was
like,
this? Just what was this?
This I'm actually from all the petrol. You know, it's like people go, "You can fill up a car in 5 minutes." It's like, cool. I don't really want to drive for 4.5 hours and only take a 5-minute break.
Yeah.
It's shit.
Yeah.
So my car charges in like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Go get a
in
drink.
Timaru, at the 200 kilowatt charger in Timaru.
Yeah. It's just easy. And this is the thing. Like I'm what is it when you're evangelical? Like I see the same comments time and time again. They're just as damaging to the environment.
Oh, Chewy. Did you push your button again, bro? Good grief. Hello. Welcome back, button pusher. Hurry up.
I really have to remap that button.
To remap that button. Good grief.
All of the things that I've seen in the chat today that are anti-EVs have just been thoroughly debunked. Like over the life of a vehicle, they are way less damaging than a petrol vehicle.
Yeah.
Like they start out about equal, but then they're outpaced.
Well,
so quickly.
Like Catherine was saying, what it used to be was front loading the cost. Much more expensive than petrol. There is a brand new Fiat 500e right now, brand new. It's a town car, so maybe 350 Ks range for 35K. Brand new, 350K, Italian Fiat 500e, 35K. That is equivalent to or cheaper than the petrol counterbalance. So that's all changing, that front loading.
If you're interested in it, it even makes the engine noises. Which just makes me laugh. You know, you're not going to need a battery replacement in 5 years unless you buy a clapped out Leaf, which is going to be dirt cheap anyway. The batteries don't go into landfill; they get reconditioned. Like the processes of reconditioning a battery pack now, about 95% efficient.
There you go, 28K for an Aura. And also the other thing is I wasn't quite a Neanderthal, but there was a part of me which did, because you're right, Chewy, you do stop when you're traveling for an ice block or a break or a stretch of your legs. But I did kind of want to go, I want to be able to go Dunedin, Queenstown or Dunedin, Christchurch. That was what I said. So the car that I bought does about between, say, let's say 410 to 420 Ks open road. It's 550 around town. So that means when we get married, we're going Dunedin, Christchurch, stopping for the night. Christchurch, Picton, stopping for the night. Wellington, I think we're doing 2 nights there. Rotorua, 1 hit. All these are all 1 hits, 2 nights. Auckland, 1 hit. No more charging at the start and finish. 2 nights. Paihia. So I've managed to get luckily get a car that I can do the whole way if we needed to. Although in saying that, Chewy, when I was up in Christchurch on a couple of months ago, when it was quite cold, I did do a charge on the way back for safety. But in summertime, it's going to be sweet as with that warmer weather. So that's gone as well. The whole range anxiety thing is gone. You can easily buy an affordable EV with 400 to 500 Ks range, easy. It's not difficult. They're there if you want to get them.
And I see people mentioning, the national grid can't handle it. Maybe if everybody bought an EV tomorrow, which I think we can all agree is unlikely. The fact is people would charge their cars at night when it's cheaper and there's not very many people doing it. And also, if we're afraid of the grid collapsing, why don't we build some more capacity into it? Why don't we do the thing I've been talking about for ages that no government seems to realize, is that we need to get more home solar, more micro generation doing it.
Yep.
I want to fuel my car from the fucking sun. That is science fiction shit. Let's do that.
All right, we're going to keep trucking now because we've got a bunch of super chats and we've got a couple other stories to get to as well. Gold, covering Doc's late fee. Yes, apologies about that. We're a couple of minutes late. Naughty boys. Chewy went to the Shire, whereas Pat went to Mordor. Saw Richard O'Brien's new play over the weekend. Oh, very cool. Richard O'Brien, of course, Rocky Horror Show, Rocky Horror Picture Show, depending on which way you're more of a fan of. I've interviewed him once. It was amazing because I'm a huge fan of Rocky Horror. Mr. Arvids, let me work with you. Let's do BHN merch go. We can do merch for other people too. Well, I'm still figuring out. It's a pretty big outlay and I haven't quite pulled the trigger yet, so I got to figure it out. Well, we'll let you. You'll be this, probably, I was going to say the first. No, you won't be the first. You won't be the second. You'll be in the top 10th to know, Whānau. I'll know. The person there will know. Chewy will probably know. My partner will know. And then maybe you guys. So top 5? Top 5 seems okay. That seems fair to me. Kia ora, Tea-Towel Gang. Oh, BHN Tea-Towels. We could print
Yes.
them.
Let's do a tea-towel.
What do you think about the Nikki No Boats? Because then I'm thinking sticker. Nikki No Boat sticker as well. This big. Slap it all over New Zealand. Brilliant. EV show. Catherine, you've got to come back. What else we got there? The green energy revolution just perpetuates BAU. BAU is not an option. I don't know what BAU is. Can you help me? No? Bow. BAU.
BAU. What is that?
Bill, don't have to do a super chat. Just send us what BAU is.
Business as usual.
Okay, business as usual. Just give me the money, says National, according to Campbell. Thank you, all these people, for the super chats, by the way. Cars are just a red herring. There are tons of Life PO4 batteries thrown away in vapes, torches, and most rechargeable electronics. Meaning that the people are making a big fuss about one thing and there's worse batteries being thrown away on bigger scales in other products. Is that what we're saying? That's what I'm getting from that.
Yeah, and look, I don't think it's one is better than the other. They're all bad. Like, don't throw your mobile phones into landfills, you bloody Neanderthals. It can all be recycled. But like when we talk about vapes, right? One of the dumbest things was rechargeable lithium batteries and disposable vapes. For fuck's sake, that was the dumbest thing I'd ever seen.
All right. Jackson says, Italians make pretty cars, but not decent cars. Still would like a, what did we say? A Fiat 500 Abarth back in the day.
Yeah, see, the Italians were never good at engines. Like, they'd make 16 engines, and one of them were good. And maybe the EVs are the way out. They don't have to make an engine.
I think Fiat now, though, is owned by the same company as Audi, isn't it? So there might be a little bit more reliability coming into them. I could be wrong with that. In fact, what did I see yesterday? I was watching a YouTube clip about a certain company going under in America, and it had some name that no one had ever heard. And then it had the list of cars that it owned, and it had a full circle of about 20 different brands of cars that were all owned by this one company. It was unreal. Wellington to Rotorua is hilly. You might need to at Taihape or Waiouru on your way. Maybe we'll find some BHNers along the way. And I can come plug into your granny for a bit. Granny charge is what I mean, because we better make that clear, because that could have come out slightly wrong. We should move on. No, nothing to see here. Hey, a really quick one for you guys, because there was an announcement today. Sir Brian Roche has been named as the new Public Services Commissioner. Sir Brian Roche has been named as a new Public Service Commissioner 13 months after Peter Hughes announced his retirement from the role. Sir Brian will begin his new role in November. He will serve for 2 years and 8 months until, well, whatever. In a statement, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon said Sir Brian was a highly respected New Zealander who had held significant roles across the public and private sector. See, the reason we have questions around this, of course, is that we think about Lester Levy, and we think about these people that this national government is. So who is this guy? Who is he? He has a proven track record of leadership and delivering results, has a strong network in the public sector and business community. He understands how to manage properties, develop talent, and drive performance. It sounds all very business CEO-ish, doesn't it? This aligns with our government's focus on raising the performance of the public service so that New Zealanders get their services they deserve. Sir Brian, right, here's some of the history. Sir Brian was the inaugural chairman of both the Auckland Regional Transport Authority, and the New Zealand Transport Authority, NZTA, He has also held roles at Hawke's Bay's District Health Board. He was New Zealand's NZ Post Chief Executive for 7 years. He was recognised for his services to state and business with a Knights Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit in 2017. Most recently, he led a group set up by Labour New Zealand First Government in 2020 to support and improve the country's COVID-19 border security. Luxon also acknowledged the leadership of Heather Baggett today after she acted as commissioner while the appointment process for a new commissioner was underway. She has stepped into the role and done an admirable job, and I'd like to thank her for her calm, thoughtful leadership during this time. Now, the CV sounds okay, wouldn't you say, Chewy? It doesn't sound like it's massive warning bells. Seems like he is a seasoned public servant working under both National and working under Labour as well. There's really not a lot about him, but perhaps the highest recommendation we can give for him is prior to the election, Shane Jones was not a fan. So this is prior to the election.
That's a reasonably big tick.
Yeah, the role he
An
had
unexpected big tick.
The role he had prior to the election, Sir Brian, Shane Jones called him a numpty for it. So that's got to be a positive in his camp. This is an old story, but it'll give you a bit more about the background about what this man's done.
Want to play?
No, we're not going to play bloody advert. What's going on? Look, I've got my ad. Oh, that's why, because my ad blocker's not on. Resume ad blocking. Sheesh, what's going on, people? Thank you. That's what we appreciate.
Disappointing, out of touch and full of numpties. That's how some Northland leaders are describing the Crown-owned company in charge of buying assets that'll eventually be offered to Ngāpuhi in a treaty settlement. Our Māori Affairs correspondent, Te Aniwa Hurihanganui, explains.
This kiwi fruit orchard near Whangārei could one day be owned by the country's largest iwi, Ngāpuhi. Crown-owned company Tupu Tonu has been purchasing assets like this for the tribe's future treaty settlement, so it doesn't miss out. A welcome idea that, in practice, has left some underwhelmed.
Tupu Tonu are more interested in buying boring old real estate or overpriced kiwi fruit farms and not investing strategically and transformationally.
They are appropriate.
Someone push them in the lake.
But they're very, very small investments.
Tupu Tonu's 5-member board, appointed by government ministers, has invested just under half of its $150 million budget so far into commercial property, a carbon forest, community housing and 3 kiwi fruit orchards.
It's fallen into the hands of numpties. They lack the skill.
So Shane Jones, not a fan. Not a fan. Big tick in my books.
They seem to be tone deaf and largely inept.
The company now has an opportunity to invest in a water storage reservoir.
And then you got Dover Samuels. Seems like he is a fan.
project near the Waitangi River. Northland's prone to severe droughts, and the Taitokedo Water Trust says it's a no-brainer.
I'm mind-boggled, quite frankly, about the reason why they haven't come to the fore.
In a statement, Tupu Tonu's chair, Sir Brian Roche,
Here we go.
says he recognises the economic and environmental potential of the reservoir and no decisions have been made. He says the company actively engages with Ngāpuhi Hapu to understand their commercial aspirations.
But whether they're in tune with the psyche of the hapu of Ngāpuhi, I'm not so sure.
If the board walks away from this, I'd say that there'd be a huge backlash.
Northland leaders unconvinced they'll be offered a settlement they actually want. Te Aniwa Hurihanga.
So he has a background. Like, I'm not saying that gives you the absolute clarity on who this guy with this very important role is, but you know, he seems to be someone, Chewy, who's been involved in the public sector for a long time, has a relationship with iwi. I'm not saying he's God's gift in every area. And as I said, if Shane Jones says no, that's a big tick in my box for a yes. So we shall wait and see, I guess.
Nothing against. Look, I know nothing about this man apart from what you've just read, but I think the point here is we're at a stage where if Luxon comes out and says, "Hey, look, I've found this guy is really good and competent, and we're going to put him in charge of stuff," my alert status goes up.
Yeah, warning bells.
Like, I am not soothed. I am not happy to take it on face value.
Because what it will depend on is what is the memorandum of understanding between the government and this guy? What are the instructions he has been given? What are his targets and what should they be? Because if the targets are we need to find 20%, then whoever does that is going to be terrible no matter what their background.
Yeah, and like there's a couple of people in the chat just pointing out the view that as he's gone from organisation to organisation, he's left it worse than he's found it. So
Do we know that?
yeah.
Or we're just suggesting that? I'd have to go through the dates of that altogether. But I guess the thing
Well, David,
it doesn't
T.
look,
here
put it this
says,
way. It doesn't seem to be jobs for my mates, which that seems to have been a national. So there seems to be at least that part. You know, it's not a what's his name? Bill English. It's not a Paula Bennett. It's not these people like jobs for the boys and girl, but the mates. So there's that aspect of it, but we'll have to wait and see. When he was boss at NZ Post, what does it say? We went through restructure and jobs. Okay.
were cut.
All right.
So yeah, he might be a hatchet man. He might not be. You know, NZTA, Auckland Transport haven't really covered themselves in glory. So yeah, look, it's hard to find hope in anything that comes out of Luxon's mouth. Is what I'm sort of underlining.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. Look, I'm going to do a story as well that we haven't publicised about. There was, some poll results released today, which I don't really care about. I'm being really frank. I don't really care about. There was one very important part about it. I'm going to play you just 3 seconds here, and then we're going to come back to the story after we talk about school buses. I was really surprised when I heard David Seymour speak. It sounds like he had been slowing down. Like, I haven't slowed this down. I just want you to hear this. We're not going to do the story yet, but it's a nice little interlude between. You ready for this? Maybe I'll go back 5 seconds, and so you'll get the lead in from Lux Flakes. Where's that go? About there. And then you listen to Seymour. I double took when I heard this going over my shoulder.
Government working incredibly well, and it's very focused, and they know that there are better days ahead of us.
The coalition's working so much better than our enemies hoped.
You know what I mean?
Oh.
There's a bit of it's just kind of like, what's going on there, Mr. Seymour? What was the maybe he's I listened to a Tom Segura as I was coming down on the plane. He talked about 10 milligram tong. He just has little hits of his cannabinoid. Maybe he's on that. Maybe that's what it is.
I mean, he's always had a weird sort of almost slurring way of speaking, but that's like the worst I've seen it.
Yeah. Here's another little one for you. Then we'll go on to the last story. The thing that was interesting about that, there was a full 10-minute story on TVNZ. But what was interesting is they got to a part of it. There's 3 or 4 minutes where they talk about how do people feel today versus how they thought they would feel.
So sorry, Pat. I was literally
Breaking news.
Just trying to find out. Apparently, David Seymour has motor neuron disease.
Really?
Yes.
Well, let's check that, because that is a 3-year death sentence. Motor neuron disease. It's what my mum died of. I have not heard this.
Yeah. Look at well, this is obviously news to me. David Seymour is living with motor neuron disease and reflects on the vital role of his family and the impacts on him.
Is that David Seymour? I can't see the photo. Is it David Seymour in the picture? Is it our David Seymour?
Or is this just a complete... Oh, it's the other David Seymour.
No, there you go.
Remember, ACT had two David Seymours.
Well, that doesn't look... I said that doesn't look like David Seymour in the middle there. Jeez,
Stand down.
mate.
That's the second... That's the problem with having a second David Seymour.
Thanks for coming along tonight, folks. That's it for us. We're done for the next few days.
Oh.
You watch people clip that. The AHN said last night that David Seymour's got motor neuron disease. Yeah, I thought that would have been...
Other David Seymour.
Yeah, no, not to be too blunt. It's a 3-year death sentence. The average length of someone after they've been diagnosed is 3 years. So very sad for him. Very sad for anyone. I've been through it with a 77-year-old mother. Not nice. What I was going to say about this story, there was an interesting part about this poll, the series of polls, which was, how do I ask the question? If you look back 12 months, how you thought we would be going a year on, how are we going? So it was kind of looking at like, how do you think we're doing as well as you thought we would be doing? That bit's quite interesting in the conversation and the research they've done. So we will have a look at that. But firstly, I just want to bring this to people's attention. It really is a little story, but I've been the parent of a child with a rural bus route. Rural groups concerned over cancellation review of rural school bus routes. And Chewy, you know how you're not supposed to, what's the old saying? Shit in your own swamp or something, whatever that is. Federated farmers are not happy. Now, the reason I know a little bit about this was when I lived in Auckland, we lived out in a part of Auckland called Huia. Now, it's not technically rural, it's not, cows and stuff, but there was no bus service out there. So when there's no bus service, the government has to provide a way for children to get to school. They have to pay for it, right? And so we had a school bus provided by the government that came down from Huia, through Armour Bay, up through into where were my kids going to school? Langholm? I can't remember. Might have been Langholm. And so they had to. It's law. They have to provide a way for children to get to school. And there wasn't an Auckland buses service that went out there, so they had to provide it. Now, what I'm assuming from this is there are now places where they currently have to provide, I've been a parent of that now they're not, which is interesting when we think about this government and money. We'll go a bit deeper. Rural groups are raising the alarm over the review and cancellation of school bus routes. The Ministry of Education said it regularly reviewed routes to ensure they were operating within policy requirements and meeting patronage targets. Now, what we need to do, Chewy, is find out under Labor how many routes were cancelled each year. Because if it's 000, 000, then that says something about this government and funding. Ministry Group Manager of School Transport, James Meffin, said the primary responsibility for transporting children to and from school rests with their caregivers. However, the ministry may be able to help where distance or accessibility may be a barrier for students. To be eligible to receive ministry-funded school transport assistance, there must be 8 or more students using the bus. Students must attend their local, state or state-integrated school and must live within a certain distance from the school. I remember when our kids did it, I think you couldn't live within 3 k's of the school. So in other words, even though there was no bus going down that, if they basically said, if you're within 3 k's, parents can handle it. If you're 5, 6, 7 k's away, we'll provide, paid for the bus for it. That was the ruling that we used to do. Here we go. Federated Farmers is trying to save more rural routes from being scrapped, coming up with a list of solutions it has sent to the government. Rural education. I wonder if any of those are like, we could cut out those tax cuts and landlord reimbursements. That could be, just Get rid of that. Rural Education spokesperson Toby Willis said they had been hearing from members who were really concerned about cuts. Williams said the government needed to immediately review eligibility criteria. For example, at the moment, you need to have a minimum of 8 children catching the bus from an area for it to carry on running. But we think that should be lowered to 4. I mean, if they can, I mean, you wouldn't expect a full bus for 4, but, you know, maybe that means they can provided vans, you know, like a high-ace van would be their bus. That would keep more bus routes available and reflect better the realities of rural New Zealand, where we do have smaller communities than in the past. That goes on. It's like I said, Joe, it's a very little story. That's kind of the end of the information I've got. I'm intrigued by it, though, because in an era, this current government, where they are very much giving with one hand to a sector and taking away with the other. This is a sector that this government in general seems to want to make sure are unimpacted by their policies, and this could be one. Any thoughts?
The uncharitable part of me wants to go, see, you do need to help with something. You can't just all be like, we're fine on our own and we don't want the government to interfere in anything. And this is the danger, isn't it? The other part of me, the charitable part of me goes, fuck, that must be absolute chaos for those families looking at that.
Yeah.
Because they've got to send their kids to school, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've also got to run their fucking farms.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're on a dairy farm, I can't imagine that someone's got the time to chuck the kids in the ute and drive them, 2 hours to school or something like that and get back. You're screwed for milking. It's and this is the thing when people talk about the urban rural divide. I think at its heart, we all understand or have the ability to understand the differences that we're all dealing with. But here we go. The rural sector has been very, very hard on Labour. They have been very, very pro-national. They've got what they wanted, nationals in government. First on the chopping block, your kids.
Because look, on that, Nick's added some information. National fiddled with rural school buses previously under John Key. Also late soz. So maybe this is more. I mean, I'm not going to cast this aspersion quite yet. I'll do some work tomorrow to see what happens under Labour. Maybe we'll see if Labour's done it as well, but that's what we got so far.
I'm not crazy. This is something that people would understand as a public good.
Of course.
Isn't it? Getting kids, rural kids to school is a public good. And I don't think, like, as long as, you know, I guess the contracts to review who supplies that is they're competitive and fair, then that is the price that they pay. Is the answer that these rural schools get supplied a van and that they do the runs themselves? Is that something that could be done? I don't know.
I mean, I guess there is a part of that story I didn't go into talking about public-private partnerships. Of course there is. But yeah, I mean, I think that if you've got a public school system that's supposed to be free, it's not free. It's never free. I mean, but it's, you know, if a parent at a primary school, a state school said, I've got no money to pay, their kid would still get their education. They may not get all the field trips and stuff, but most primary schools will probably help out and make it. But if you're doing that, you also got to then help the kids get there. Look, this government's all about, you know, fewer children missing school, but at the same time, making it harder for kids to get to school. How do we square that circle? That seems to be counterproductive, even if it is just 4 or 8 or whatever. Because you could go into the private thing and go, well, do it, you know, if there's only 4 of you, then why don't you just do a parent carpool? You know, Johnny, you're on week 1, and Jamie, you're on week 2, and Sarah, you're on week 3. But I guess the thing is, it's a little bit like we talked about last week, Chewy. I'm not sure it was with you or with Emily, but the role of the charity. You know, the role of the charities come up to fulfill some of the things. Sorry, the role of governments come up to fulfill some of the things that charities and churches used to do. And if you fix the problem, I've probably told this story before, if you fix the problem, they won't. I worked with the guy at News Talk ZB who read news in the evening. And there's this thing, you'll know this, Chewy, called the DRR, the digital reel-to-reel. Remember in those old movies, you'd see those big 2 reels spinning with a tape going? So that's the reel-to-reel. So they called it the digital reel-to-reel. It was only on the computer, you know, pretend reel-to-reel with imagery. And he'd record into that the news for the night, and it kept cocking up. In other words, the news would go out corrupted to a whole bunch of radio stations. And he could have fixed it, in other words, gone and manually changed them all, but he refused to. Because he knew as soon as he fixed it and made it work, they would do nothing to fix the problem. So he let it fail, and then they fixed it. So there's that element of it as well. You know, you have to let things fail. If you go fixing all the problems, then what's there a reason for government or institute or business or charity to fix the problem if you do? You know what I mean?
I'm just going to highlight something that's going on in the chat because it's hilarious. Look, this wasn't, I guess, aimed at farmers, but still what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I can't believe that there's so much scum in New Zealand that thinks others should pay for everything for them. So sad. Yes,
Everything.
but farmers are primary producers. You know,
Yeah.
we should pay for their kids to go to school. I think everybody agrees that that's a public good.
Well, hang on. But I quite like this from Bob. So let's get rid of the police. A lot of people aren't that much, they're not fans of police, but let's get rid of the services, get rid of libraries. You know, they're all paid for by us. Other people want them and stuff. There's lots of stuff under Bob's world that we could get rid of pretty easily. I think that we should look into it.
Earlier tonight, Bob said, and I assume he was looking for praise. So here it is, Bob, that he has private health insurance. And I guess the prize for that is getting to tell everybody else to get fucked. And the thing is, Bob, you live in a society, and every day, whether you like it or not, matey, you're using something that we've all paid for.
Yep.
Because that's what a society is. You don't live in something like the video game Rust, where you salvage everything and you build a little fort so your local raiders don't come in and fuck up your day. You know, as Pat said, the police, you know, your broadband connection. Did you pay for all of that, mate? No, you didn't.
I think that was actually one of the examples I was going to mention when we talked to Catherine, and she talked about, you know, paying for infrastructure for EVs. It's like when I moved to Dunedin was the giga town, right? So Dunedin, like the week I moved in, they were awarded the prize for being the first city in New Zealand to have gig fibre.
Giga town.
And I've moved I've moved 2 houses, but when my kids went into their house, so there's been 3 movements for my kids. Every one of those, the fibre was paid for by the government to come to the house. We obviously pay for the fibre, but the installation of the boxes and stuff didn't pay for. Other people paid for it. And that sort of feels a bit the same because it's infrastructure, yeah? Like the EV infrastructure sort of feels the same. All right.
Anyway, Bob, good luck voting for ACT next time round, I guess. I don't know how you stumbled into our chat, but yeah, I guess stay off my roads is what I'm saying here. Like,
and don't call my police or my firefighters if anything should go wrong.
Yeah, there's the absolute classic. He's called us basement dwelling bludgers.
I'm in my basement, so mate, I know
I
don't dwell here.
I wish I worked less hours. Yeah, but yeah. A fully functioning member of society here, Bob. I guess I don't get a medal, but I do get a podcast where I can tell you roundly to go fuck yourself. Have a good night.
Ow, I got something stuck on my finger. All right, let's get to this last story, which is not advertised. Didn't know that TVNZ had a poll tonight. Started making the show at 5 o'clock. Finished it by about 5:40. But there was one interesting part of it. You know, they did the whole, you know, how many seats would that be in the House? I don't give a crap about your numbers. Everything's margin of error at the moment. Yes, the right is stronger according to the polls. That's trending correctly. Yes, the left aren't as strong, but it's all margin of error bullshit anyway. Oh, I think they actually made a headline that both National and Labour went down 1%. in this poll, which means nothing. So what? So what? All right. But this part was pretty interesting. You know, 12 months ago, how did you think you'd be going today, and how are you going today? That's the summation of it.
A year ago today, the public voted for change, electing a leader who wanted New Zealand to get its mojo back and saying, see you later to Labour. Today we asked Aucklanders if they felt any better off a year on.
I think we're on the winning side.
My opinion, probably a worse position.
I think we're treading water. You know, we're probably more heading in the right direction.
Nothing has come to fruition really under the new government, and there's clearly a lot of mess to be cleaned up.
I'm more positive. I think we're heading in the right direction.
In our One News Varian poll, we asked the public if they felt the country is in better, worse or the same shape a year on from the election.
So that's interesting, yeah? So are we doing better? Are we doing worse? What do you think? And I would expect, Chewy, this to be 50-50. Because the most vulnerable are doing worse. The wealthiest are doing better. And those in the middle probably haven't changed that much. So in other words, that sort of would be the expectation. If there is a swing either way, that can be a good swing if people think we're doing better. If it's a worse swing, then that's damnation of this government, I guess.
Around a third think we're better off. 40% though feel things are worse. And just over a quarter reckon there's been no change.
So this is an interesting way to look at this number because you could say that, I'll just get all those numbers again.
And just
there we go. You could say that 56% of people think that we are in better shape or no different. So that could be sold as a positive. But you could also say 2/3 of people think we're in worse shape or no different. So it could be sold as a negative. So I think those numbers probably, each side could use them in any particular way. Although, obviously, the 40% mark in ACT colours there by chance are saying that we're in worse. That's so think about it that way. That's 4 out of 10 people. If you work at a place with 50 people, 20 of them are worse off. That's how they feel. Putting numbers to it, that's an interesting thing. If you're in a workplace of 10 people, 4 of them think or are worse off. Before I push play, Chewy, do you want to add to anything?
It's not 90% in worse shape, so I feel like I'm going crazy.
Yeah.
And this is the risk of being in an echo chamber. So just
but the thing is, that's why I said I think it should be an even spread, because the thing is we are aware of people who are in worse shape, but I'm also aware of people who are in better shape. And I would think the top third would be better, the bottom third would be worse, and those in the middle would be about the same. And actually, it's not that far off it. If that was 33, that was up 3, that was down 7, that was up 7, it's not that far off that. But it still comes in that if you're using these numbers, the biggest slice of the pie is in worse shape today than they were at election day. Now, the next question you'd have to ask is why? Are they in worse shape because of what this government's done? Are they in worse shape because of what the previous government left them? Now, I'm not asking that question. I think everyone would know what I'd say based on what this government's doing right now. But that's still a fair question to ask. Let's get to the end of this.
just over a quarter reckon there's been no change. In the Garden City today, a somewhat rosier outlook.
Yeah, I'd say better off. Yeah.
And why's that?
Had a pay rise from the boss, which was a nice thing.
Feeling a lot more confident, and I feel like the job market's slowly picking back up.
Probably about neutral. Yeah, I don't think things have shifted that much.
This morning, these former political heavyweights
So they just echoed it. One better, one worse, one neutral.
Eden.
In relative terms, New Zealand's a small little country, but in absolute terms, we're like a super tanker. It takes a long time to stop it, a long time to turn it around, and a long time to get it going in the right direction.
Michael Wood, how long is too long?
Pretty worrying for the government, I would say. It has been a year now. And we are seeing some things that are worrying people. 47,000 new people unemployed this year. That's Eden Park full of unemployed people this year.
And in Dunedin, a tough crowd.
I think it's worse off. I think the government's...
Yeah, I don't think this government's going to get a welcoming from Dunedinites. If you saw that hospital march, there were those three people. There were the top third, the bottom third, and the middle third. When you're talking about income, they were all there. They were all there.
Made a lot of promises that they haven't kept.
We thought we were going to get an improvement by voting for change, but that's not what's happened. Broken promises.
See, that's damning, because what she's saying is, I voted for them and they promised us change, and we didn't get it. The next lady saying broken promises, maybe she didn't, but this lady here, she definitely is someone who voted. well, in my opinion, because she said, we voted for change. I read that as I voted for change and I didn't get it.
I think the government's made a lot of promises that they haven't kept.
We thought we were going to get an improvement by voting for change, but that's not what's happened.
Broken promises, no Dunedin Hospital.
I look at this town especially, where the shops are closing, there's nothing, I don't know, I just think New Zealand's in a bad way.
The majority sceptical, the government's got us back on track. Benedict Collins, One News.
So there you go. Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying, Chu. We have to be careful with our echo chamber. And I think one of the ways I get around that is I consume all media. Like, what would you call right-wing media? I mean, you guys know what pops up in my algorithm because it ends up being in the fucking show. And there are some people out there who are doing financially spectacularly well at the moment, thanks to this government. Any thoughts, sir?
Yeah. Yeah, every time that there's a survey comes out, I'm like, why are people not seeing the things that we're seeing here? We're seeing some really dramatic societal changes happening. Some things that will affect us in a big way downstream, and I think a lot of things that don't stack up to how previous governments of either shade have dealt with things. I don't think this is really sinking in with the population yet. And like I've mentioned this on the show lots. Like, we're all very politically active. We're all very politically aware. But for a lot of people, this shit just slides through. They're not interested. And it'll be something that hits them at home or something that makes it personal to them before they start to notice. And I think what you saw in that news piece is the Dunedin Hospital stuff brought it home to everyone.
Yeah.
In one big hit, but that is just one sliver of what this government has been up to. You know, the same for the people up north that are now going to have to be paying tolls on a road that they paid for.
Yeah.
You know, that'll bring it home for those guys. For people who now can't get their kids to school, is that going to be something that they go, oh, I didn't vote for this? Will you be thinking that same way if you're sitting on the dock at Picton, realizing your whole family's holiday's gone up in smoke because the boat's broken?
Shut up. Don't say that out loud, bro. What are you talking about? That's not going to happen. Dude, they're going to be fine. I'm going to get across. It's not a problem.
And I think this is a problem. Like, we've spoken about how it's just been a downright assault on Māori from this government. And when you're not Māori and you're not on the receiving end of that, you just roll your eyes and go, what are these guys complaining about? That's why it's important that we stand with them. You know? So yeah, I don't know how long it takes people to notice. Maybe that's what John Key was talking about with his ridiculous oil tanker analogy. Bear in mind, this is a man that spent most of his year in Hawaii and is completely insulated from anything that happens here. But yeah, sure. Let's get him on the news again. Let's see what he has to say.
Yeah, I wonder. John Key's interesting because he was liked by a lot of New Zealand. You know, a guy I can have a beer with. And I wonder, there's been a few moments he's popped up, and I wonder what's going on in the National Party for this guy to be popping up into public. I wonder if it's more calculated when he shows his face. I don't know, but I just wonder, because why are you here? Why are you getting up? You know, you're worth 50, 60, 70 mil, as you say, spending why the fuck would you get up at 6:30 in the morning to go talk to a TVNZ program? Like, why? What's it about? I don't trust that someone's just doing it because I'll be a political commentator now. What's it all about? I think we could see more to that as we see this government go on. I wonder if he's in there because Luxon's unlikable. I wonder if he's in there to remind people, you know, Barack Obama, he's doing a lot for Kamala Harris at the moment. People love Barack Obama, but he's still around because maybe certainly Sleepy Joe and maybe Kamala, I know people don't know that, I'm taking the piss, Sleepy Joe, haven't quite hit the same levels of likability as him. I wonder if the John Key stuff's a bit the same. Not sure, but yeah. Well, are there any super chats there that you want to do? Do you want to?
What have we got? Obviously, I made a mistake earlier in the show, and that's where people jump on me
by breathing wrongly.
Yep, absolutely. Campbell, bus routes cancelled in rural areas. Oh, I didn't think the government said that they care about farmers.
But remember,
and bringing up, like, doesn't David Seymour really care about school attendance? What happens if these rural kids get on ATVs, drive for 2.5 hours, and do a ram raid? Maybe that'll get some attention.
I'm just trying to think how a ram raid would work out there. What, like a ram raid on the cow shed?
Actually, no. I've just thought. I regret to say that this joke didn't come to me immediately, but in a rural area, a ram raid is very different from what we've been seeing in towns.
Yeah.
Involves an actual ram. I'm just chuckling to that myself. It's in the bell. It said school used to be able to provide their own bus until the last round of tender, where it was put under a block contract tender designed under National. Yep. Peter says 12 months ago I thought we'd be reamed, but now we're being reamed with no lube. Look, we're not going to talk about P. Diddy tonight, but I'm sure we'll get around to it eventually.
No, I hear that, and I think of the best diss track of all times, No Vaseline by Ice Cube. Holy moly! You want to hear a song? If you haven't heard it, when Ice Cube left NWA, left them all, and he left them all alone and didn't do anything, and then they came out. They called him Benedict Arnold, which in America means a traitor, and his response was a track called No Vaseline, and it is the most brutal diss track. It's still in my gym workout music when I'm playing on my headphones. So if you haven't heard it, No Vaseline, Ice Cube.
Dave Monson has a good tip for you, Pat. Get flexi sale option for those ferry tickets.
Yeah, I got the most expensive one. It's like $415 on Blue Bridge, and that was like, oh, then if you have a problem, you can get it back. I'm the kind of person that when I went to in Auckland in the weekend, I do I'll pay $29 insurance for the car. Like, I don't take the risks. They're like, you can pay $2,000 as a bond or $29 a day for insurance. And I go, I'll take the insurance. Thanks, but no thanks. So yeah, I did that for the ferries. People are saying, oh, I'm distracted. I'm sorry. I wasn't distracted. I was texting Emily. Hi, Emily. About Nikki No Boats.
Hi, Emily.
So I'm back now.
Hi. That's it. I think I've got all of them.
So let's get to the end of the show. I think that's how we do it, isn't it? Something like that. I don't know. What else is going on? Tuesday, tomorrow, another one. Yeah, I don't know. So this is a really bad wrap up to the end of the show. Maybe we should, maybe I do need to go to bed. Maybe that is what it's all about.
Oh,
I can stop it. So yeah.
Sorry. I was going to mention this. Like we're
so professional. We are so professional.
So good. I saw a story. It was pictures of with the Auckland Harbour Bridge. They built it and then they decided it wasn't wide enough.
And put the clip-ons.
They put the clip-ons on.
Yeah.
I saw a story about that, and someone in the comments was going on that was national. With like all their expert advice at that point was that the Auckland Harbour Bridge that they were building needed to be wider to deal with the expected traffic, and they went, nah, 2 lanes is good enough. And then immediately had to add capacity to it. So I guess that's something that's consistent about National, is that they cannot think in long terms.
Yeah,
they just don't. Going back to the 1960s at least.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't realise that. That's actually it's one of those things that we talk about. You think of those policies that New Zealand won't let go of: state housing, public health, interest-free student loans, all those things. They're all left wings. And if someone had said to me, "Oh, what about when National did the Auckland Harbour Bridge?" I'd be like, "Yeah, short-term thinking.
Wasn't big enough."
Yeah, it wasn't big enough. They didn't think big. See what I did there? Politics.
Well, I mean, that's
that
the sole example of that they did get it right.
Yeah,
and they almost bankrupted the country doing it. But they purchased fucking 40, 50-year infrastructure.
Yeah.
So they can do it with an oil refinery and a hydro dam, but they can't do it with hospitals. Just can't do it.
All right, Joey, that was a good wrap to bring it back. I feel the energy enough in the room now that we can say goodbye. I put Nala on the screen so everybody's happy. You know, they're only hanging around to see her, and now I can say one more thing.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have their hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting bees from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a warpath to run, and linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a sub and a higher in mind. All heavily either this way or that, and we'll be analyzed by what Chewie and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
Hey, Chewy, in and amongst my distraction, did we put up chats from, there seems to be some chats here from Wooming and Bill and those guys. Did they go up when I was distracted?
Oh, no, I think they were after I did my lot.
Because they're not starred. Silent Assassin popping up. Should worry us all. That's John Key, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Bill says, anyone checked out the Door Brothers?
Nope.
So I'm sorry that we missed these guys a little bit. They didn't pop up into the right part of the screen they normally do. And there's also another one here. I'll get to that. There we go. Mr. Arvid says, so professional, can't imagine why TVNZ won't talk to you, LOL. Stay here afterwards, sure. We've got some news about that. Oh, that's cryptic. That's cryptic. That's craptic. All right, team. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. We will catch you tomorrow night from 9 p.m. for another edition of Big Hairy News. Hooroo!
Bye!